Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN Weekly for Saturday, May 25th, 2024. And our top story today, a stock market plunge. And joining me now to help break it all down, Jane King is a financial journalist joining us from the NASDAQ. Jane, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good to be back, Jeffrey.
Interesting week. Last week, I felt like we were really in some highs. We talked about Dow 40,000.
Right.
This
Right.
week,
Yeah.
Jane, a little bit of a plunge. Really significant loss, I think, in the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the first time in like 2 years.
Yeah, it was the worst day for the Dow Thursday since March of 2023. So down more than 600 points. And
Wow.
yeah, I think we closed one day above 40,000 and then that was it. We're now farther away. So I started hearing Thursday morning just more talk about there just seemed to be a lot of negativity. I don't really know what was behind that exactly because we did have a business activity report that showed business activity picked up in late April and early May, but just more kind of pessimism about interest rates and can we, inflation stickier than we thought, and things seem to be slowing down. And are we going into stagflation? It was just, I don't know what was in the market, but that really added Boeing. Boeing was the big loser on Thursday. There's a lot of concern about Boeing and its future. And so all that led things lower, at least in the Dow.
Well, Boeing, I think, weren't they on the Singapore, weren't they the airplane for the Singapore flight that I think someone unfortunately passed away from that
Yes.
severe turbulence?
I don't know if that was a Boeing plane, but that was
They've had a bad run of news.
they've had about it, and that
Bad
was a
run in the public
turbulence
mind, I
thing. It
guess.
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't really, maybe just, because it's just another piece of negative news regarding Boeing, but um that was why you always wear your seatbelt, even when you're sitting in a plane, because that was really bad turbulence
Yeah.
and the video.
Definitely, and yeah, certainly scary. I'm sure very traumatic for all those people and their families.
Yeah.
Jane, you mentioned the business activity report. The economic data still seems to say, I want to get your reaction to this, that the economic data is hot, which means that, if you're the Fed, and I know the Atlanta Fed president came out, but if you're the Fed, you're like, should we raise rates? Should we cut rates? Should we leave rates the same? It still leaves a lot of unanswered questions for the market.
I can't imagine like what the Fed must be going through. Like you've got this, but you've got this. I mean, so and when you look at some of the earnings reports that we've got, Walmart, I mean, they talked about how, they're seeing stress in the shopper. Wealthier people are starting to shop there because they can save money. Target had a horrendous report this week in terms of, and they're cutting prices on 5,000 items. We've got McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's all coming up with $5 value meals because people are struggling. So there's all these anecdotal things that you hear from companies, and people are feeling financial stress. I think a lot of it's behind what we're seeing in the election and the polls. But yeah, some of this economic data comes out pretty good. So it's hard to tell like exactly where we're going to be in 6 months.
And let's talk a little bit about oil prices and gasoline prices. I think the current administration released gasoline from the reserves, the petroleum reserves. I think that's what it's called, to help take the pressure off prices. I'm not sure. I guess in the short term, Jane, that could have an impact on food because transport costs
Mm.
and electrical costs and things like that will go down.
Yeah. Well, this was the Northeast gas supply that they tapped. So that was created after Superstorm Sandy in 2012 when the refineries all had to shut down. And so we're supposed to have this gas around for an emergency. And not a politician, wants to boost their poll numbers. But here we go. So it is 2024. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting when you look at the inflation CPI number from last month. Energy and housing was 70% of the inflation that we saw. Food prices are actually starting to settle down a little bit. So maybe they just, over the summer, just as people are driving and going on road trips and things like that, they just didn't want to remind them about the gas prices. But let's just hope we don't have an emergency, or else we could see prices really skyrocket.
And to that point, Jane, I reading reports this week that there could be a extraordinary hurricane season, and that would
I
impact
saw that too,
oil refineries in Louisiana,
right?
down in the Texas basin, that area, right? I mean, so that, maybe it is a little premature. You talked about releasing, or not you, but the administration releasing gasoline. It could be a little premature if you have hurricane impacts in our refinery, in US
Absolutely.
refineries.
Yes, I mean, I saw that forecast as well. And if they start heading up to New Orleans and Houston, we could definitely see an impact on the energy market. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all, we don't know. We don't
Yeah.
know. Jane, last question. Let's talk about NVIDIA. That's something that artificial intelligence, something you and I have talked about a lot over the course of the last many months. NVIDIA coming out with booming
Yeah.
earnings. I want to get your reaction to that. And then this stock split that they're a 10, I think it's a 10 for
10
one
for
stock
one,
split.
10
So,
for one
so let's
stock.
talk about sorry, go ahead. Talk about the earnings first and then maybe go to the stock split.
Well, they just, had a blockbuster earnings report again. I think this is the fourth or fifth one in a row where they've handily beaten expectations, already high expectations. So kind of reminds me of Apple in its heyday. It was just, unstoppable. And that's where NVIDIA is probably, I think you can make the argument, the most important stock company in the world right now in terms of the future. So it just shows, the demand that you're seeing for these computer chips that they make. And not just, but consumer websites, they're looking to implement AI to kind of help gather data about people, direct marketing to them. There's the auto industry, there's just all kinds of industries that could benefit pharmaceuticals from AI. And I mean, I think it'll be like the internet that everybody's going to have to adopt and use it at some point. And NVIDIA, I mean, the CEO, Jensen, he says, we're in the early innings of AI. It's hard to buy a stock at $1,000. It is going to split, so it'll be cheaper at some
So
point.
yeah, well, so what does that mean? If you get 10, they're going to split it. So if you own a share, you now will have 10. Is that what that means?
Yes. So it's $1,000. So it was 10 for one stock split. So say you have one share at $1,000. Well, you'll have 10 at $100. So it doesn't make any difference in like the value of portfolio, but there's some psychological thing about when a stock price is lower in price, more people will come and buy it. It just makes it easier for all kinds of investors, especially small investors. So, um, we'll see if they keep doing this, but NVIDIA is really, the poster child of this AI revolution that we're going through.
Could you see them ever supplanting Apple and the Amazon? Or is it too early to tell? I mean, there's always darlings, there's always darling managers, always darling companies. But could you see them just based on, you're a vet, you've been in the industry, you've been following markets for a long time. Could you see just based on what you know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but could you see them supplanting these other companies like Apple and Amazon are going to use artificial
Right.
intelligence, are
Right.
using artificial intelligence?
And they're coming up with their own chips, and Google is too, and their own. So after the stock rally on Thursday, NVIDIA was worth $2.5 trillion. So it's almost worth as much. I believe Apple's around 3 trillion. So it's, and Microsoft is right there too. Microsoft also getting into AI. So I mean, we could have like 10 companies in the US that are worth trillion plus, and they're all
And
tech companies.
it's amazing. And
Yeah.
just to end on, I read a story that Scarlett Johansson, she's been a big advocate for, the use of the AI and getting paid for her likeness. I wonder, Jane, if they came to you and said, we'd like to have Jane King on 100 different networks at the same time, and we're going to give you a cut. That sounds like I'd like to be able to monetize Jeff Snyder. Wouldn't you
I
like to be
would
able?
I would certainly listen to what they had to say.
Absolutely. Well, it is. I think it's a trend here to stay,
Yeah,
and it's in every industry. We're talking on the network, and you're talking with lots of people.
absolutely. I mean, it adds too much efficiency. And is such a money saver and a data gatherer that I just think, yeah, I think AI is here for sure. It's just a matter of how fast it's implemented, whether it's overvalued. But yeah, it's definitely here to stay.
Yeah, and it gives people who were doing, I think, repetitive jobs more opportunity too. So I don't look at it as just a negative. I think that's the way the major media kind of positions it. It's so negative and they're going to take away jobs. That could be the case, but I think it gives people the opportunity to maybe do a little bit more fulfilling work. And I think in today's
Yeah,
mental health concerns. I think that's something that people
Absolutely. I think I've talked to a real estate agent that's using AI to kind of help find homes and what people are looking for. And he said it frees up time for the agents then to spend time with the customer, with the potential home buyer, driving them around, looking at places rather than kind of just, on the internet searching for things. So the AI can take that over. So there's lots of examples like that.
Yeah. Well, Jane, always a pleasure seeing you. Thanks so much for joining us. Look, we look forward to having you back on the program again next week.
See you next week.
Thanks, Jane. It is always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this week. And when we come back, we take a look at some of our best segments for the week. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. It was another great week of shows with great topics and, of course, great guests. We kicked off the week with a look at how two organizations are collaborating to train long-term investors. Let's take a look.
It's a program to try to place recent graduates at the biggest and coolest pension plan in America called CalPERS. I've been in and around academia for 20 years, and I can tell you most students don't even know what a pension fund is, let alone, have the capacity to tell you what CalPERS stands for. And so the idea that we had with CalPERS was to say, hey, let's create a pipeline that allows us to educate students on this ecosystem of the world of finance that most don't know, but then also direct some of these students to spend a year working at CalPERS and even over time other pension plans.
Yeah, it's an awesome compliment from Ashby, so much appreciated. And we do love being groundbreaking and pushing the envelope of what a pension fund is, and we've got an amazing history over our multiple decades of doing that. So we sort of view this as the next step in our talent and culture strategy and finding a new exciting pipeline and getting people jazzed about pension funds in the U.S. And just like any other employer, we're struggling with finding the right people to either teach and sort of grow into roles or finding those experiences. And so for us, it's a matter of this program is bringing in people early in their career and giving them the opportunity to learn and grow into being a pension fund investor. It isn't as easy as sort of picking what mutual fund or what dated fund that, oh yeah, I'm going to retire in 2060, and so I'll just put my funds in there and let another professional. We are the professionals on the other end trying to figure out how to get long-term value for our members and retirees.
I think just having an opportunity to work at the epicenter of the pension ecosystem is a remarkable kind of feather in our cap with this fellowship. So we're not just sending you off to any pension fund, we're sending you off to the biggest. And really, that's an exciting proposition. I think the other piece, just to mention, is most undergrads today, if they're interested in finance, like they think their only pathway into the world of finance is an investment banking analyst program. So you shuffle off to Wall Street, you work 100 hours a week, you go through the training program. It's kind of like a boot camp for a future life in the world of finance. And we think we can build a different entry point. This fellowship ideally kind of takes that more mission driven, dare I say, investors that really want to secure pensions and give them a different access point to this career path without the 100-hour weeks and Sunday morning work sessions.
Some of the challenges are just sort of how you balance thinking about the long term, which we're obviously in this for the long term, but also nearer term opportunities. And so thinking through sort of risk and benefit and how you choose between asset classes are some of the fundamental challenges of a pension fund. And so we view sort of this is a great opportunity for the fellows to be dropped right in the middle of it and see what the challenges are. And we think those that hopefully work through the program and want to stay with CalPERS or stay in the pension landscape will really get excited about it and excited about the challenge. Because if they're not excited about sort of how do we provide 2 million members long-term pension stability, then they really aren't going to be the right folks for us. We think that mission is what drives folks to want to work at CalPERS for many, many years.
Next up, we discussed how food, diet, and exercise all play a role in Alzheimer's disease. Let's take a look.
It's pretty remarkable, that number. Every time you think about it, 7 million Americans in this country have Alzheimer's disease. And it's a disease that right now we really don't have any significant treatments for. There's no cure for Alzheimer's. We still don't have a really great way of diagnosing it. And when it's diagnosed, there's really not much we can really do to alter the course of the disease. And as you can imagine, anyone who, people who have a family member, a close family, a friend or a relative who has Alzheimer's, they can truly know how crippling and how life-changing that diagnosis can be. With that being said, with time, we have gotten better at detecting the earliest signs of Alzheimer's and being able to intervene and make lifestyle changes that can really help those patients and really improve their quality of life and their caretakers' quality of life. Some of the things that we've done is, we have better cognitive tests. We have better laboratory tests that can kind of pick up some of the very subtle key things, better imaging tests. Like we have much more advanced MRI that can detect certain areas of the brain which are affected by Alzheimer's. If we see them shrinking or becoming smaller, that gives us a clue that this person might be developing Alzheimer's. But still to this day, there's no, one lab test you can take that, it's like yes and no. It's a kind of a grand sum of a bunch of different things that lead us to that diagnosis. But again, 7 million people is a staggering number, and that number continues to increase over time. It's not like it's getting any smaller. Prevention and being proactive about your care is the utmost important, because once those biochemical and pathways have kind of taken place in your body, it's very difficult to reverse what has taken place. It's almost like putting sunscreen on to prevent skin cancer and taking medicine or multivitamins to prevent getting ill. It's the same concept here. What can we do for ourselves? Little things we can do in our daily life, little lifestyle changes we can make to potentially prevent a disease that could be life-changing and irreversible. So it's really worth looking into. You are what you eat. That's what I say to all my patients, literally. It's something my mom used to tell me, but it still holds true today. Diet, lifestyle, exercise to some extent as well too, but diet, what we are eating every day, what we're putting in our bodies, what our bodies digest and absorb into our bloodstream, the nutrients we get from these things. It's so important. Interestingly enough, since we have gotten a better understanding of neurodegenerative is a term that we use for diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, something called Lewy body dementia. There's like 8 or 9 different neurodegenerative disorders. And what does that mean? Degenerative. That means degeneration, breakdown. So when the brain is essentially breaking down, I hate to say it that way, but it's basically what it is. And one of the effects of that is losing your memory. And that can be one of the most startling effects of that. Things that very simple things, forget, closing the door when you leave, you may forget that. Turning the stove off when you're done using it, recognizing your friends, your family members, where you live, how to get home, all these little things that we take for granted, all of a sudden become a struggle for someone with a neurodegenerative disorder. Now, what we have discovered over time, interestingly enough, since we've understood these more, is that there is definitively a link between your gut and your brain. And if those two are directly interwound, that good gut health leads to good brain health. And that goes everywhere from your oral hygiene, your oral health, to everything, your esophagus, your stomach, your colon, and that all links back to your brain. So literally, you are what you eat. And we're just learning that now in the past 5 to 10 years, that how important diet is to the development and to the management of neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's. There's a whole branch of science dedicated to understanding and figuring out and identifying which foods in our diet have the most beneficial impact to our brain and neuro health. So you literally have scientists studying day in and day out. They dedicate their whole careers to figuring out which one, take ginkgo biloba, but don't take this. Take, 5 scoops of this, but don't do this. And still we don't have a good idea of what's good and what's bad. But in general, there are certain trends that are kind of coming out. And remember, these things are not easy to study. It's not like we can take somebody and put them in a laboratory and force them to take a diet and watch them and study them every second of the day. There's so many factors that get into this. Consistently healthy over numerous studies are this one diet is called the Mediterranean diet. And we can talk maybe a little bit more about that after the commercial break. Think ingredients or foods are very high in polyphenols and antioxidants. These are things that directly work on building your red blood cells, your immune system. They boost it. Vitamin C has always been shown to be beneficial. And now what we're getting into more are certain almost spices. Turmeric, for example, has been shown to be very beneficial or potentially very beneficial in patients who are trying to prevent neurodegenerative disorders.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN Sunday. We'll be joined by the Legal Eagles, David Levine, Kevin Walsh of Groom Law Group, and Oliver Rennick of the Schwab Network. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving. Don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.